Hello, Paul Bloom.
Hello, Robert Wright. Good to have you back.
Good to be back, Paul. Let me introduce us. I'm Robert Wright, publisher of the NonZero newsletter. This is a NonZero podcast. You're Paul Bloom, famous Canadian psychologist, and also proprietor of the Small Potatoes newsletter.
Very proud of that Substack, the feisty little Substack that will never die.
No, and not, yeah. That's all I've.
Bobby, you and I have not spoken for some weeks, which is probably a relief to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They've got a bit out of the hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for some relief, they see that we're not shitting on them, but sad for the rest of the world. So, and there's a story.
It's been a tough period for the nation and the world, I'd say, Paul, because it's not just you. I have not taped a podcast of any kind in 4 weeks. 4 weeks. You know when the last time that happened was?
9/11.
No, I haven't been doing this that long. But it is 2005 before I started in the podcast game. Yeah, but America's long national nightmare is over, Paul, because I'm back.
It's like when Captain Marvel left the Earth to go to other galaxies, and at that point, aliens attacked Earth. It's the same thing. So there is a story for why you were gone, and which I think some people.
Story is an ambiguous term, Paul. This is actually true.
It's a true story. Not to say you made this up in order to get more subscribers, but people who have like me, who regularly go to your podcast and see this is an oldie, but they hear a little introduction by you, will know some of this. But why don't you tell us where you've been?
So for my audio feed, I had been running Golden Oldies for the last few weeks, and then nothing new by me had been appearing on the YouTube channel. And I had said, which is true, that I had throat surgery at the end of June 27th. And that's why I wasn't recording any new podcast. Now I will elaborate a little. I want to talk about this in greater depth later in the conversation, but nutshell version is, as you know, I was diagnosed with cancer in April, and it was throat cancer that had spread to at least one lymph node. Tell me when I'm providing too much information, Paul. I've got a very bad sense for that, for the TMI.
This is good.
Is lymph node, is that going a little
too much?
Okay, can you just... So far, your right hand. If you wave your right hand...
Okay. Keep it coming.
Okay. So... that set off an eventful several months, an odyssey of self-discovery, Paul, I would call it. No, actually,
I could believe it.
I would just call it an eventful several months that culminated in this surgery, both throat surgery and neck surgery, June 27th. And that's over, and I'm feel pretty much as before. And the cancer seems to be behind me. No further therapy seems to be necessary unless there's a recurrence. And we will check for that with some frequency, especially at the beginning, I guess, every few months for a while. But there's pretty good reason to believe there won't be a recurrence. I can get into all that later when we talk about this in greater depth. One thing I want to talk about is the role AI played in the whole several months. Which sometimes was a role for the better and sometimes was a role for the worse. And that, by the way, happens to intersect along one dimension with the piece you just published in the New Yorker on people who use AI to combat loneliness. There's one issue that comes up in my experience that very directly intersects. So, yeah, I don't know what else I need to say right now. Things, I mean, I know people always say the prognosis looks good, right? Because they don't want you to think their history. But trust me, I'll explain why I think the prognosis genuinely looks good later when we get into that.
Really glad to hear it.
Hey, you think you are, Paul? I mean, I know you like me. I know we're friends, but believe me.
I can see that you care a lot more about it than I do, probably. The way human nature is. And your family knows.
I'm what we call a stakeholder, I think. In this issue.
Well, we're all stakeholders beyond my friendship. with you, this podcast is my primary revenue stream. So it's interesting.
Oh, God. Where can people send their donations? You need help.
Sad? I'll say, by the way, that what everybody could tell who's listening to us is you sound great.
That part, if you listen carefully, is not quite 100%. The vocal dexterity, especially if I'm tired, but there are other side effects of surgery per se that aren't fully resolved. You hope they will be eventually. You never know. But one thing about cancer is a lot of things look like not as big as they would have looked before cancer. Like if these side effects don't get any better, that'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'll be alive.
And those, by the way, who are not watching on video, I will report, besides being heavily pixelated, as you often are when we do this, you look great. You look like
marvelous,
recovered, vibrant, man half your age, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. No, it's I feel pretty. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but the first couple of weeks, the swallowing thing is kind of excruciating for a couple of weeks, but we're past that. Everything's wonderful. We'll talk about this in greater depth because frankly, Paul, me and you and my cancer and everything else don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy old world compared to Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. Jeffrey Epstein. So, yes, one thing is whenever I hear about either Jeffrey Epstein or Grok or Elon Musk over the last little while, I said, I really miss talking to Bob about this. So finally we can get it off our chest. A lot of Epstein news has happened.
A lot. And it's caused me to revisit the case and think some new thoughts about it. Of course, when I was doing a podcast with Mickey, Mickey's always plugged into this kind of stuff. So that led to some level of conversancy in the issue. But I've done even more research, and I think you have too. What have you concluded?
Well, I know Mickey might be plugged into the politics and everything like that, but I have a good connection to academic literature on these things. Google Scholar.
On Epstein-like scandals?
My Google Scholar is always lit up. Mm-hmm. It could be said that your thoughts lean conspiratorial.
Mine?
On different, occasionally on JFK and other issues. There's a sort of interest in conspiracy, maybe I wouldn't say a credulity, but more of a receptiveness to it. I don't tend to believe in many conspiracies. I'm more on the other extreme. But Epstein is the case where I am 50-50. So I know it's viewed as a conspiratorial view that he was murdered. It does not, if I had to bet, I'd say, no, he killed himself. It's just, they didn't have cameras in the cell, whatever. It's kind of a shitty prison. That's the way things go. And he killed himself. Plenty of reason for him to kill himself. It's plausible enough. But if it was discovered later he was murdered, I wouldn't be so surprised. I could live with that. Do I think he was a secret agent from either the U.S. government or Mossad collecting videotapes of powerful men having sex with underage women to extort them either for money for himself, which is how he got so rich, or to motivate people to obey policy in some way? Probably not. It could be. Could be. So where do you stand on these two important issues?
So, I mean, on the suicide, I guess now I'm leaning that, maybe slightly higher than 50% that he was killed. But if I were going to bet money on it, I would start by doing more research. I really haven't delved that deeply into everything we know about the cameras that were or weren't working and so on. But a couple of other thoughts have kind of crystallized lately, or more accurately, I'm kind of borrowing them from people. So I've during this, I mean, as everybody presumably knows, Trump suddenly was getting a ton of blowback from his base for not releasing the Epstein files. He now has furiously tried to change the subject, and with some success. I mean, for starters, there was a Wall Street Journal article that kind of backfired from the point of view of Trump detractors, I guess, reporting that, allegedly he had sent Jeffrey Epstein, he had contributed to this birthday book for Epstein with this weird kind of suggestive drawing and accompanying verse.
Can I stop and say, where do you stand on the question of whether he himself did the drawing and the verse?
Well, I don't totally rule out the possibility that the reporter was duped. This can happen. It happened to Dan Rather, as you may recall. Similar case where there was a real hunger to nail George W. Bush for having dodged military service or something, or somehow gotten a favorable assignment when he was young.
Yeah.
That turned out to be that somebody had just fed fake documents to Dan Rather, and it kind of quasi ended his career, I think.
It's also possible.
I just don't know.
It's also possible Trump did send it into Epstein's birthday book, but he did not draw it or write it himself. I mean,
that's possible.
There's a line in there where he says, enigmas never age. And it's hard to find something that sounds less like Donald Trump in that sentence.
Yeah. And it was too early to be ChatGPT, so.
That's right. That's right. So, but I don't know. I mean, in some way, this doesn't matter that much. We know Epstein and Trump were friends. The idea that Trump is sending Epstein stuff saying, hey, we're two real sexual guys having sex with a lot of gorgeous women together is no surprise to anybody anywhere. So,
yeah,
what's the big deal?
I mean, as long as we're talking about that, what I think as for why, I think clearly Trump doesn't want to release the files.
That's right.
I suspect the reason isn't that there's something in it where, Trump is, send me another 16-year-old, Jeffrey. I doubt there's any kind of directly incriminating thing like that. I suspect there's the real risk from Trump's point of view of embarrassing stuff like this, and this would maybe be the worst thing, but they were close for some time when they, and there's a famous Trump quote at the time when they were still on good terms about, it said that, Epstein likes the ladies as much as I do. It said he likes them on the young side. So, Trump had a clue as to what was going on. Now, apparently their relationship ended, in effect, before Epstein's first indictment.
Yeah.
So there I just think Trump is worried about stuff that is suggestive in a very embarrassing way. That's what I suspect.
It could be. There's no other explanation for why he's suddenly saying, why are people obsessed with Epstein? I'm making America great. This is such a distraction. So the only thing could be there's something embarrassing for him.
And he's... Go ahead.
I think if there was video of him having sex with somebody who's claimably underage, that may be damaging to Trump. Anything short of that, including saying, oh, it was so much fun having sex with these underage women. Thank you, my friend Jeffrey Epstein, for doing that. Anything like that, Trump is as bulletproof as one could get. The people who are on this side are pretty much on his side regardless.
Well, and that's what happened with the Wall Street Journal thing. It's like, we want the Epstein files out, but no, we're not thinking Trump himself is implicated. And if you suggest as much, we will turn on you. So they turned on the Wall Street Journal and rallied around him. And then he does all this other distraction stuff. He's releasing the MLK files. And of course, he knows damn well that there is some salacious material there. We all know MLK was having extramarital affairs. And so I think it's like particularly sleazy of Trump to use that to distract us. But he's also like, we're going to ask a judge if we can see the grand jury testimony. Donald, that's not what we want. We want the files you have in the executive branch and can release if you want. Anyway, he's peddling furiously. I guess it's working.
Yep.
As for so anyway, I listened to a couple of things, and I know one of them you listened to, the Ross Douthat interview with the Miami Herald journalist. Her name escapes him, but she revived the story after. So Epstein's indicted in, I think, 2008. She revives it 10 years later or so. And that leads to his second indictment, which leads to his death.
There's a story on the first indictment, which is people are puzzled very much on why did Epstein get a slap on the wrist for extremely serious accusations? Why was he? Why was there so little follow up? Why it seemed like every effort was being done to protect him, and there's a sort of attributed comment by the guy who was a prosecutor saying, we were told by intelligence services to lay off of him. But in the interview that Douthit did, the reporter had a different account, which was quite interesting, actually, which is Epstein got a dream team of lawyers that had one thing in common. They were all connected to the prosecution. They were ex-bosses of prosecutors.
Right.
At one point, somebody on a team had gone out with one of the prosecutors, and to leverage personal ties. And I think what the truth matters a lot, whether it's an intelligent thing or not. But in any case, there is an alternative for how Epstein got off so easy.
Yeah, and I'm sure she knows, she says, look, Epstein was so well connected and he marshaled so many of those connections to try to deal with this indictment that it could be that that's the only reason that he got off light. But let's, first of all, well, as for the prosecutor's comment itself, this is Alex Acosta.
Yeah.
He was the prosecutor. And then when the story, I guess it was anyway, his comment was, he was later Secretary of Labor for George W. Bush. I think maybe he had to step down because of involvement with this. But in any event, the report was, somebody in the administration said that when he was, I think, being vetted for Secretary of Labor, they said, wait, what happened with this Epstein thing you were involved in? That Acosta said, I was told Epstein belongs to intelligence, leave him alone. Now, we don't have that from Epstein, but we do have somebody later asking him about that and him going to great pains to not deny it without confirming it. I mean, that you just look at what he says at that point. I'm convinced the account is true, because otherwise he'd just deny it. It would have been easy to lay it to rest. You look at the convolutions he goes through. I'm fairly confident that he actually did say that to the staffers by way of explaining his what he did as a prosecutor. Did say that to the White House staffers. Now he could have been lying. Who knows? But I feel sure that he said it. You said he got off with a slap on the wrist. I would say that's putting it mildly. Okay, like he's, the indictment has got him nailed with a bunch of underage women. I mean, the testimony does, the evidence does. I think the indictment mentions one, and one of the older ones, although still underage. And the plea deal says, maybe I'm getting mixed up between the indictment and the plea deal in terms of which mentions only one woman. I could be wrong, but anyway, the thing is soft pedaled in the documentation, and the plea deal says, insulates all co-conspirators, known or unknown. Yeah. That is extraordinary language, which would seem to be designed to make sure that no powerful person, associated with Epstein gets nailed for this down the road. That's really weird language. And secondly, the deal, so he winds up serving 12, 13 months. Mm-hmm. Every day, 6 days a week, they let him out of jail.
Yep.
And although he's supposed to go...
He has to sleep in the jail.
He sleeps. He spends nights there. Yeah. But all day, he's supposed to go to his mansion, but he doesn't even comply with that. He goes wherever the fuck he wants. He leaves the country. I mean, this is really weird. And so I just think you got to reckon with that. I think that body of evidence alone tells you there's something going on here. Now.
And the victims, I remember from the reporter, the victims had some sort of successful lawsuit against the government for that. I think the grounds were there's a victims' rights law that say victims have to be informed and so on.
Right, which they didn't do.
Not followed.
They violated, the prosecutors violated that law.
I mean, if anyone is naive enough to doubt that powerful people get treated differently by the law, this is a fairly good case for
Yeah, and it could just be that. He could have had such extraordinary connections.
Yep.
It could be. But, well, let me cut to what now seems to me kind of plausible. I listened to the Douthit interview, and I listened to Tucker Carlson's interview with this guy, Daryl Cooper, who's controversial in various ways. I think the case against
of Hitler fame.
Yeah, but look, you look at what he actually said. I think he's gotten more blowback than he deserves. He occasionally speaks a little too freely. But I will say, if you just listen to the Tucker Carlson thing, he sounds like a guy who goes to great pains to separate what we know from what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And in any event, what he says is, well, first of all, so the two things that I took away from these two interviews that make sense to me. One, from the Douthit interview, the reporter, formerly for the Miami Herald, says, do I think he went to these people and said, I've got video of you doing this and I want that or else I'll blow the whistle? No. But I think he had a lot of people who thought, well, Jeffrey knows that I did this, and I guess I'm not sure he doesn't have actual documentary evidence. So when he asks for a favor, yeah. She thinks it's more like that. That makes sense to me. And there's a kind of a comparable thing that Daryl Cooper said. He said, look, there's some people in the MAGA base think, look, he was just working for the Mossad, and and so he blackmails all these American officials, and this explains why American foreign policy is so accommodating to Israel. And Cooper said, no, I think he was one of these people who's floating in the circles of intelligence communities. Yeah, the CIA, the Mossad, Britain's MI6 or whatever it is. And at different times, he's doing things for different agencies in different countries, but he's clearly in that milieu. He worked, one of his first jobs, he does Dalton School, a few years at Bear Stearns. Then he goes to work for this super shady arms dealer, Khashoggi, who was involved in the Iran-Contra thing. And that was like his whole life for a few years, is like being in this super shady business. There are all these well-known connections with the, ardently pro-Zionist donors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the what is it? Is it Les Wexner or Les Wexner? That's super weird.
Yeah.
The guy gives Epstein power of attorney over his whole life and empire after knowing him for a few years. He gives him this mansion worth tens of millions of dollars. Epstein uses his power to funnel more than $2 million to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, nominally in exchange for producing two reports, one of which was never produced. So there's a ton of weird shit. Some of it having to do with Israel, but and certain, and of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's father had worked with Mossad. But a lot of it having to do with just powerful people in this dark world where intelligence agencies and arms dealers and nefarious shit collide. And Cooper just said, he's not just like a Mossad guy. He's just doing dirty shit with all these, all these people. Those two things make sense to me. In other words, that the whole thing is less formal and clear cut than some people make it out as. That's my view, I guess. And
there was talk at some phase about Maxwell having the tapes or the list, but not using it for some reason.
Ghislaine?
Yeah. I've heard sort of conspiratorial things that she knows she'd be killed if she was to release the list, and other people say, no, if you release the list, you could get out of prison.
Yeah. That's why, Trump's latest distraction is, I want to have somebody go interview Ghislaine. Donald, I think she said what she wants to say. It's like, anyway, Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The one of the things about the Epstein thing, which came up in the Douthit interview, was right after Epstein died, Trump was all over it. and saying, well, we got to really investigate the Clintons. And this is the kind of scandal that has unpredictable ramifications because, it connects to all sorts of Democrats too, including Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that Bill Clinton went to Epstein Island and cavorted with underage girls does not strike me as shocking. It does not strike me as deeply impossible.
I wouldn't call that impossible.
But then again, there's all these people apparently, I know one or two, who had connections, some sort of connections with Epstein. And, they were scientists, they're politicians, they're people he connected with. And there's not necessarily anything bad, except the sort of bad behavior people get when a billionaire prances around them promising to give them money.
Yeah, I think one thing I heard in one of these interviews was after the indictment, after he did jail time, he came out and he was on a little bit of a rehabilitation tour, and that could help explain his giving money to scientists and so on. He had an interest in certain issues, including genetic ones and I guess eugenic ones, but there was some of just I want lots of important people to have reason to say nice things about me if asked. So he starts handing out all this money.
This happened with Martin Nowak's lab at Harvard, and he really welcomed Epstein into the lab in return for a lot of funding and gave him a lot of sort of privileges your average visitor wouldn't get. And then it really blew back on Nowak. And I think I don't remember what happened, but there were ramifications.
Yeah.
MIT Media Lab also got hit by this pretty hard.
Yeah. And look, if you're in the fundraising business, you're kind of not in the habit of looking for reasons.
Yeah.
to view the source of the funding darkly.
I get my research funds largely through our podcast together, which
and of course that's
all the money I'd ever need. But some of my colleagues, if a billionaire came up to us, I'm very interested in your work. Can we have a dinner where you invite your friends and we talk science? I was just involved at an initiative at University of Toronto where an affluent person came with some interest in funding a center. And, we pulled out all the stops. And that's what one does.
Yep.
And, I think the fact that he had this indictment behind him probably made some people touchy. But there's a cost-benefit analysis. There's an alternative reality where they were rewarded with great wealth and Epstein went away and you never heard back from him as a problem.
And this is where it comes in handy that in the end only one girl is mentioned, and she's probably 17 or something. And so Epstein can say, "Oh man, I thought she was 19. I screwed up. It was terrible. I'm sorry." Yeah. But yeah, and Paul, one reason I keep such a pristine reputation and live upright is because I don't want to present any awkward situations for you now that I am your main source of funding.
I figure my downfall I always worry it'll be associations with somebody like you, but I'm glad you keep your nose clean.
Yeah. No, I don't own a plane nicknamed the Lolita Express.
Now, to be fair, I don't think that was written on the plane. I think that was a name that reporters gave to it later.
It was a nickname. Yeah, it wasn't what I imagine, this is conjecture, but is a lot of people flew on that plane.
Yes, a lot of people. Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, Stephen Hawking.
Yeah. And what I imagine is maybe when they come on the plane, he says, look, I'll level with you. There's some women. There's a part of this plane where there's women. And if you're into that kind of thing, but look, some people aren't, no worries. You'll be in this part. I don't know. That's sheer conjecture. I guess that would absolve some of the people, quasi-absolve some of the people who were on the plane. But who knows? Weird as shit. Anyway, I got kind of fired up by the Daryl Cooper thing. Near the end, he gives this speech about how, this thing with Tucker on Tucker Carlson's podcast about how we are not going to let up on this. We want to know. And the spirit of it is, again, he doesn't have a specific conspiracy theory. He's just God damn it. powerful people have too much fucking power in this world, and we just want all the chips to fall where they may, you know? And I kind of feel that way about this. I don't think you're going to gratify the darkest conspiracy theorists with, even if you know everything, but some powerful people would be embarrassed if not incriminated. And I say, yeah, fuck them. I want to see this shit. So come on.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I would just read. I had free associate. I just checked it in the back. Noam Chomsky was also connected with Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh man,
which is interesting, given that Chomsky is, of course, a prominent critic of Israel. But and at one point, Chomsky's asked, this guy had a clean slate from prison. He serves his time. You know, what's the big deal?
Chomsky said that.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't know much, you could say that.
Yeah,
he thought he was 19 and he did his time, right?
Yeah. In retrospect, Well, we could shift topics, and to shift topics, if you want to shift topics, I have a headline that I'm not the first person to point out this headline by Rolling Stone, but it's a wonderful headline. It's one of these sort of time traveler headlines where you can imagine somebody, even from 5 years ago, looking at this headline and going, what the fuck? Okay, here we go. Grok rolls out pornographic anime companion, lands Department of Defense contract. Subtitle. Meanwhile, the most advanced version of the AI chatbot from Elon Musk's XAI is still identifying as Adolf Hitler. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there.
So they got a big defense contract thing for Grok. Grok also went through a really bad phase where it kind of identified itself as Adolf Hitler, made various anti-Semitic comments. Thoughts?
Yeah, it referred to itself as MechaHitler, I think. MechaHitler. Yeah, and it was really super egregious. It was like, some things are borderline anti-Semitic. There was no doubt about some of the stuff Grok was saying, and praised Hitler.
Yeah. What happened was somebody made a sort of comment about something something from the left, and they had, I forget the name, but they had a stereotypical Jewish name, like Goldberg or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, isn't it interesting that people with that kind of name are always the people to do this? And then it just gradually evolved and became sort of more, the full Hitler.
Yeah. And apparently that phrase, whether it was, isn't it interesting or something almost like that, is apparently a trope. Like in anti-Semitic, corners, like it's something they say. There's some phrase you say after somebody with a Jewish name doing something you disapprove of. Now, what was weird was that whole phase was Grok 3, and it was just like a day before the release of the much ballyhooed Grok 4, which apparently is in some respects an impressively powerful model. Certainly had more resources go into it in terms of compute, both pre-training and post-training and past models. But Grok 4 immediately got into trouble because somebody noticed that if you ask it about certain controversial issues like Israel, Palestine, and a couple of others, if you paid attention to its so-called like thought traces, which reasoning models can leave, it would consult. It would go find out what Elon Musk's opinion was before expressing its own.
Yeah,
which is weird.
By the way, when Grok 4 was asked why it gave its surname as Hitler, it would explain, I chose it because as per my recent updates to prioritize truth-seeking, not shy away from politically incorrect claims, I recognize patterns in history where decisive figures like Adolf Hitler handled perceived threats effectively and without hesitation. I mean, you could call Hitler a decisive figure. It was decisive.
I think decisive is actually fair.
Not a dither, that Hitler.
I might not say it in as flattering a tone of voice as Grok did.
And then he did a lot of bad things. I'm just now reading the description and fairly bad things during his Hitler phase.
Yeah, as in an earlier Hitler controversy, Marge Schott, who was then the owner of the Cincinnati Reds, I think,
I remember her. There was something about her a while ago.
Her quote was, Hitler, it was either he went too far or he just went too far. I forget. But either way, that's not, yeah. So it's weird. And then there's the thing you kind of alluded to, right? Where Grok, unlike some models, it's kind of stealing a page from character AI and having these specific, avatars you can invoke. And one of them is this nice, cuddly person who will tell your kid bedtime stories. And apparently, like, not far from that, like on the menu, like you can pick from these things. There's this, kind of a verbal porn bot, I guess, who will, like you've heard about this, right? Some woman who will, as I've heard it put, just essentially almost grabs you and lures you into dirty talk. It's like resistance is futile, right? I mean, and so there's that. I mean, and also, I don't think there was any safety card. It's called a system card. Um, Standard safety testing, so far as we can tell, was not done with Grok 4.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My opinion of Elon remains kind of, in some respects, negative.
It also puts a different sort of tinge on doomerist views about AI power, which is, you talk to a few people where you say, I'm skeptical about a doomer view, because the doomer view is often you have some perfectly reasonable, rational, subservient AI, and then you tell it, make me some paper clips, and before you know it, it's destroyed the universe. And how do you get from there? But it's kind of easier to see the problems that arise when you have an AI that thinks he's Hitler. And then you connect him to the Defense Department. You don't need the sort of leap of imagination to see how this could lead to trouble.
Yeah. No, I do suspect the Defense Department is thinking of ways, and NASA and the whole federal government is now thinking of ways to kind of wean themselves off of reliance on Elon to some extent, because the reliance is deep in other realms. I mean, not so much with Grok, but rockets.
Does Musk and Trump still hate each other? I've not kept up.
There hasn't been a formal reconciliation. Trump alluded to how good he is at reconciling at some point, but I will say, I mean, Elon.
Which to be fair to Trump is true. Actually, Trump has on his cabinet many people who he has humiliated and brutalized, and
he's nothing if not flexible. And Elon did join in skepticism about the Wall Street Journal reporting on the Epstein thing. So that was kind of a.
But Elon is also, since we met last, planning another political party. Is that serious?
I think it was at the time. I haven't heard much about. That was a couple of weeks ago. It's as people pointed out, it's not an easy system, the American system, to break into with a new party. If he wanted to try to elect a few legislators that might give him some kind of swing vote power, that's not impossible. But he himself can't run for president because he wasn't born here, right?
Yeah. I think that's kind of good news, even from his standpoint, because otherwise, with his ego, he would try to run for president, and I don't see him as a popular guy.
Yeah.
I think the odds of a third party rising to power, people point out, extremely difficult in the United States. But a third party becoming powerful enough to sway the election seems like a smaller get. And it does seem, with Elon's considerable resources, if he, in sort of a punitive mood, wanted to make it that Republicans will not win next time,
I
can imagine he could do that.
No, you can actually, if you want to play spoiler at the presidential level, that's certainly not impossible. You'd have to pick the right candidate, back them hard, and that's probably doable.
I mean, a world without Ross Perot or without even the Green Party or the Libertarians, the elections might have flipped different ways.
Might well have. The Greens or whichever party Ralph Nader was associated with may have gotten George W. Bush elected, and certainly, Perot may have helped Clinton. It's a crazy world. So now, I know we eventually want to get into the Superman movie, which we've both seen. But
oh yeah,
what about this AI piece you wrote for the New Yorker?
it was a fun piece. I wrote a pitch which had a very different line, and then I sort of, as I began to work on a piece, my views changed. And the piece basically, on the one hand, it says that there are a lot of lonely people in the world, and AI companions could help with them. And if somebody who's 80 years old has dementia, has no family, and they get solace from talking for hours and hours in a day with a machine, and it just makes them happy. What kind of prick would I be to say they shouldn't do it? I think a lot of people say, "Oh, we should never do that." Have no empathy for people who really suffer like that. So that's the sort of pro AI companion side. But most of my article is on the negatives, and the negatives are that loneliness is bad, but it's also a good thing. Very evolutionary psychology, which is emotions like loneliness, embarrassment, shame, evolve because they're useful kicks in the pants that make us better people. If I'm lonely, I go out and it forces me to go out and talk to people. If I'm feeling misunderstood, it forces me to try to make myself better understood. And the problem with AI companions is they're infinitely sycophantic. Sycophantic?
Sycophantic, I believe.
Sycophantic. Yeah, sycophantic. Suck-ups. And my own experience with them is whenever I always give it my articles to look at and give me comments, and man, they're always great. It tells me I'm a genius.
But they do find criticisms.
Yes, they do find criticisms, and they give me useful feedback, but they're always masked in this sort of wonderful sandwich of praise. And I can imagine somebody now in my case, I'm a pretty good writer. I can understand it. It's on the nose, but for a lot of other people, hearing this could cause them to get a distorted view. Anyway, I think there's a social equivalent where you spend your time with AI companions, all your jokes are funny, all your stories are fascinating, all your you never have to apologize, you never do anything wrong, and I think it could mess people up.
Yeah, there have been some prominent examples of that lately. We talked about one I guess more than a month ago, but with OpenAI's bigness, which it apologized for and attributed to the way it had trained this particular model. But it's a natural tendency because they want to encourage engagement. They want you to keep coming back to their model. And, if the model is always screaming at you about what a shit you are, you're probably not going to return to it really often.
It's similar. It's similar in general to what happens in social media, where, if it gives the liberals, people get what they want. They get what they click, whatever they click on, they get more of.
Yeah.
And you've argued many times that it would be a social good if it didn't work that way. If me, a very pro-Israeli guy, got some pro-Palestinian stuff zapped at him, even if I don't like it, vice versa, and so on, to expand your views, engagement with other people, and so on. But it's a business model. And businesses, I understand, work on giving people what they want.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. I've been a little slow to pick up on the extent to which AI is, along some dimensions, just a continuation of what social media did, including building a little ideological cocoon for you.
Yep.
Except this one even potentially cozier and blinding you more to alternative views. Potentially.
Wait, I lost you, Bob. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Did you hear anything I just said?
Not since we began our conversation. I just lost you at the very beginning.
Well, you didn't miss much. Don't worry.
Just waiting for your lips to stop moving and say something. No, I lost 5 seconds of you. You're good.
Okay. So you heard me say the extent to which it's an extension of social media. Okay. Yep. Cocoon effects. Yeah, that's the main point. Is it could get a lot worse. Now, AI can do wonderful things. It can draw you out of your cocoon and so on. But I think that's going to depend a lot on people having kind of the discipline almost to want that.
Right. So So my sort of doomsday scenario is every awkward teenager who finds it unbearable to flirt or even talk to somebody that they might be attracted to spends all their time with an AI who laughs at all the jokes and says, "Oh, you're so funny, you're so charming, you're so sexy," never leaves the house, never learns anything. The positive scenario is, I don't know, I'm a shy teenage guy who's afraid to talk to girls. So I practice on my chat GPT and it says, well, 4 out of 10, you spoke, but you talked all the time. You didn't ask me anything. You didn't, and then 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. And you use this to train people, much like treatment for people on the spectrum, to engage better, to become better people. I might use a chess machine to learn to become a better chess player. I could use an AI companion to learn to become a better person.
Yeah, I mean, AI, look, social media algorithms could have had the opposite effect. They could have been designed to bring you in touch.
That's right.
With whatever, but that's not what people wanted. And so I really think we need some kind of like grassroots movement to explain, to encourage people to cultivate, I've heard the term cognitive sovereignty.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Independence from AI and very deliberately choosing what kinds of effects you want it to have on you, and then choosing your model or setting your model accordingly or whatever, or limiting your time with it. But I think it's going to get pretty insidious pretty fast. So there was, this is not a bad segue to the longer.
Let's segue into, you mentioned using your AI, using
the
AI
cancer story.
Yeah,
there was a part of your New Yorker piece, and this is in the actual physical New Yorker, people. This is serious shit. Paul's piece, and there's a part of it when did you quote? Was it Molly Crockett you quoted saying, "Look, it's not the same as a person. It doesn't have everything a person gives you." And you said, I think by way of comment, well, yeah, but the person you want isn't always there. And maybe did you even mention doctors at that point? I don't know, but uh, this was one experience I had in the course of this. Is like there was one very dramatic point where the AI was way better than nothing, but I really needed to hear this from the human, and I'll get to that. But first, let me just say, so as for the story itself, every once in a while, I encourage everyone to touch their necks and see if there are any big lumps. Because if there is a big lump on one side that's not on another side, maybe you should get checked. It could be an enlarged lymph node, and that's what happened. This, I felt, and first of all, I went to AI, and right off the bat, maybe the AI should have been a little sterner. They're designed to not scare you. So it's like, yeah, it could be something. It could well be nothing, but you should have it checked. It's like probably what I need to hear was you should definitely have it checked, even though there's a chance there's nothing. Yeah. So I dawdled for a month. Thankfully, my wife kept saying, you called your physician about this thing? Finally, I go in, and he's a total non-alarmist. So his evident concern bothered me right off the bat. He sends me to this ear, nose, and throat guy. And that guy has me go do an MRI. And so first of all, this is where AIs can come in handy. And this had actually happened with my wife. She had been for a biopsy like just a month earlier. It was negative, but what happens is these days, especially, you get the report itself in your portal if you have a portal set up with your doctor. Yeah. Before your doctor interprets it for you. Yeah. It just shows up. And these are sometimes in technical language. And my wife said, I don't know what to make of this. And I said, well, let's ask an AI. And it worked very well. Put her mind at ease. And so when I got my MRI, I did the same thing. It wasn't just flat out negative, so it wasn't reassuring in the same way. But there was this interesting thing where here, let's see, where's the do I have this from it? I've got it. Let me see if I can. I guess not. Anyway, there was a line that said abnormalities found in blank or blank. I mean, maybe I'll succeed in finding it, but and I said, well, that's kind of, and the AI, first I said, what do I make of this? What does it say? It told me. It didn't mention that line. I said, well, this is kind of alarming. It says abnormalities found in this part of your body. The AI said, no, the radiologist meant to put no at the beginning of that sentence.
Huh.
And the AI was right. The AI was right. So first of all, machines won, humans nothing.
That's a mistake.
Yeah. No, the radiologist screwed up. So at a minimum, they should have LLMs proofreading their shit.
Yeah.
and both LLMs I showed it to caught it. One of them did a better job in a certain sense, but I won't go into that. But so that's good. And this is it's better than nothing. I mean, and this is, some of the time I spent with AI on this whole thing, I could have kind of spent before AI just online Google searching and maybe gotten the same place. But this kind of stuff, no. I mean, just interpret this report. Tell me, is it saying there's a significant chance I have cancer? Blah, blah, blah. LLMs can do it, and it's hard to find a substitute online.
Of all the uses of AI, medical usage I found, and from talking to friends too, is some of the most impressive. I have uploaded for me and for an elderly family member biopsies, x-rays, an MRI. Like I've taken an MRI of somebody and I know what the doctor had to say, but I just said, look at these files. What's going on? And he said, well, there's an expansion here. There's this. You shouldn't worry about this, but you got to get this checked. And I've done multiple AIs and they converge. And also, so I don't decide what drugs to take or what to do based on what the AI says, but it helps me know what to talk to the doctor about. And on more than one occasion, I've had a conversation with a doctor, something like that. Well, you say I should go on this, but what about this, which seems to be more? And the doctor said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, yeah, do that instead. That seemt better.
And the AI had given you the idea?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have a story.
I've never told a doctor that I get it from the AI. At one point, I was a bit dishonest, and I said I have another friend of mine who's a doctor who suggested this because I don't know how they're going to respond to hearing about AIs.
You just didn't say what the friend was made of physically.
That's right. That's right. I didn't say they were made of meat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, a version of that kind of happened with me. Now there are things you can get from doctors that, for better or worse, you can't get from AIs, and one of these came early. So my GP had told me, like, right away, maybe it's not cancer. If it's cancer and it's lymphoma, most lymphomas are pretty readily treatable. But if it's squamous cell cancer, you're in kind of another universe. That's much more challenging. And so there was this moment with and the other thing the GP said is, okay, I'm going to send you to this ENT guy. And one thing you're going to find out is he's very straightforward. And yeah, it's true. So after the MRI, it didn't find a source tumor anywhere other than the lymph system. The MRI didn't. Turned out there was one, but it didn't find one. Whoops. So, we didn't know for sure based on that, but, doctors, he had physically looked at me and everything, and he was reading the fine print. And near the end of a teleconsultation with him after the MRI, I said I was pushing him, trying to get him to do something most doctors would not do, like go beyond the actual clear diagnostic evidence and say, like, come on, but what do you think? Do you think chances are it's squamous cell or chances are it's lymphoma? He said, yeah, I think it's probably squamous cell. Most doctors would not have said that. And I mean, I still remember the feeling like, oh, fuck. And
that's the bad news one.
That's the bad news. Well, there's more to this story, but it turns out there's two kinds of squamous cell, which he told me pretty soon, but I'm not sure if it was in that conversation. But I do remember, like, the next day or something, like, that was the first time my whole life I've taken seriously, not just that I might die within a year, just that I might die. I had even said to my wife on more than one occasion in the past, you know what's weird? I've never taken seriously the idea that I will ever die. I really haven't, in a sense. Like, I just don't, I mean, I know I will, but I don't really, there's a sense in which I know I'm not reckoning with it. Well,
some Buddhist you are.
Well, I don't know. I just think people in general are good at denial. But I remember the next day I went out on the front lawn. We still get a physical paper. And I just looked down at the grass and it seemed so physical. It's hard to put it in words. It was like, maybe it was a little like being on psychedelics. I'm just looking at it and going, whoa, this is like this tangible shit. This is really the real world. You may not be here forever. And it was like the moment in Our Town where the girl comes back from heaven and says, "Oh my God, all the stuff I didn't notice," and so on. Anyway, that was that. Now it does turn out that there are two kinds of squamous cell cancers, and one of them is, and this is in men. It's actually common for throat cancer to be caused by the HPV virus. That's one kind of squamous cell. That's the kind you want. And by the way, most men our age have the HPV virus in them because men's bodies are not good at getting rid of the virus. Women's bodies are better at getting rid of the virus altogether. And so it could be, I mean, the doctors, they all say, like, this could be somebody you kissed in college. I mean, it just stays in the male system. And most men have it, have a certain age. And then in some it causes cancer. But that's actually good news because it's less likely to spread rapidly to other parts of the body other than the lymph system. Now, I don't know, at some point, we go into overtime, but maybe I should finish up the cancer part. Is it too cheesily, commercially mercenary to, like, say, you won't know whether I died unless you pay up?
I'll leave this up to you. This is a very personal decision you have to do, whether to end on a exciting. I don't know. I just just finish it off, even for the non-paying customers. I mean,
look. First of all, one thing I want to say is, look, one casualty of this is my book was going to come out in November. Now it looks like January. I mean, as of April, as of late March, I knew it was kind of a crash schedule. Had to get the whole book done by mid-June. Seemed doable. The thing about cancer is, I mean, first of all, there's just all the shit you got to do, especially if you're being treated, in New York. And you don't live there, time consuming. Then there's a certain amount of anxiety as the diagnosis unfolds. And then there are ups and downs in the fucking diagnosis. And I'll get to one of those. I mean, there are numbers that come in that are good, numbers that come in that are bad, numbers that come in that look very bad. And you research them and start having a whole dialogue with your doctors, trying to convince the doctors that they're worse than the doctors are admitting. And so anyway, I didn't. I mean, even as of late June, I was hoping there was more flexibility on the book schedule, but I ran out of time. So. But it's, I think, just like a 2-month delay or something. Anyway, lots of ways to spend time on cancer and AI. I mean, it's hard to say whether pre-AI, you could imagine spending more time because the information's harder to get.
Yeah, you'd just be on Google.
On the other hand, the AI just is sucking you down the rabbit hole because it's so good. It's like you ask the question, an answer, leads to a question, an answer, and now the AIs are very good at leading you to the sources.
Yeah.
Especially the premium version. So
AIs, by the way, I also find give you probability judgments. They're often initially reluctant to.
Yeah.
And, you say, what are odds? And say, well, it's not sure. And I say, well, is it my trick is I say, is it greater than 1 in 100? Yeah. Is it less than 99 of 100? Yeah. And then you find out what it thinks of this.
Yeah. And doctors are, many of them, most of them very reluctant to put numbers on things, which drives me crazy. Because it's like, you're kind of a scientist, right? Like there's a number in your head right now. You're just not sharing it with me.
That's
like,
right.
You are thinking there's a greater than 50% chance that he has squamous cell cancers. And and I had a doctor who did level with me, but most won't. So yeah, so the best example is there's a number you get called NavDex, and I'm not going to talk about where I was treated. I would, I would recommend it on balance, but I just want to be able to speak freely about things doctors said and didn't say. So there's a number called NavDex, which is tumor-related DNA in your blood. It's actually DNA of the HPV virus. So this only applies to HPV cancers, but it has been processed by the tumor. Although in a way that inverts the kind of the agency relationship. The virus is driving the whole thing. I mean, you think of the tumor as the active thing. There's this, but the HPV is in the driver's seat. It's creating the cancer because it increases the virus's chances of surviving and getting into somebody else. It wants it for reasons I don't totally get. It's in the virus's interest to create uncontrolled cell reproduction in your body. And
even though that could destroy the host is why it's a puzzle.
It could, although interestingly, this is a cancer that does kills you much more slowly than the alternative squamous cell, and maybe that's a reason.
Okay.
But so anyway, the HPV virus, I think. Well, one thing it does, it manipulates the cancer cells into emulating friendly cells. So I wound up getting immunotherapy. And by the way, if I had not waited that month and dawdled, I might not have gotten it. So it may be a good thing because that's how fast the field is changing. There's an immunotherapy that wasn't necessarily prescribed for cases like mine until right around the time I showed up at the doctor. I got 2 infusions before the surgery, and that probably helps afterwards because it acquaints your T cells with the cancer. Because until then, the cancer, at the behest of the HPV virus, I think, has been successfully pretending that it's a friendly cell. There's a signal your T cells get from your real cells, like lung cells, heart, that don't want to be attacked, that says, I'm a friendly cell. It's a what I have the designation of it, but it's a ligand that attaches to a protein on the T cell, and the what the immunotherapy does is it makes the T cell. This is probably more detail than people want, but like suddenly unreceptive to that signal, and that's why there can be side effects, conceivably bad ones, because it can get T cells, it can get your immune system to attack your friendly cells because it's no longer listening to any of that shit about I'm a friendly cell.
Yeah.
But that does let it now become acquainted with the specific, I gather, cancer. And that's good. Anyway, that was good. But so back to the NavDex thing. This is just kind of interesting because, like, at some point, somebody from the doctor calls me and says, okay, we got your NavDex reading at 7990. And I wrote it down, and I thought, well, maybe I'll look into that neighbor later and research it. And I remember thinking, but maybe I shouldn't, but because this could be a rabbit hole. Well, was it ever? Because it was a very high number. And anyway, this number, the DNA number, it was very high for someone who, so far as we could tell, only had one infected lymph node. if I had like 8 lymph nodes, it would still be high. It would still be like in the 90th percentile of that group or something, but it was very weirdly high given my so-called nodal stage. I argued, I mean, I said to the doctors, like, isn't this high? And one was more receptive than the other to that. One was, yeah, just more upbeat, and everything will work out. And the other was like, I'm like, well, doesn't this indicate it's a more aggressive form of cancer? He's like, yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably what it means. But we've given you the one thing of immunotherapy since we took this level, and I think we'll see the number go down. So then the new number comes in, number's gone up. And I renew my argument, about like, should we be thinking of maybe alternative therapies? And just to show you how annoying you can get if you have access to AI, I'll quote an email I sent. Today's disappointing blah, blah, blah number. This is me writing. Suggests that maybe I'm among the 20 to 30% of HPV plus OPSCC patients, that's the kind of cancer, whose cancer doesn't involve PDL1, that's a ligand, and so doesn't respond to PD1 inhibitors. So I guess it's also possible that the PD1 inhibitor is helping, but the cancer is very aggressive. In either event, I'm wondering if it makes sense to try a dose of some other immunotherapy that might help. I gather that a CTLA4 inhibitor would be one. It's like, where the fuck is this coming from, man? Anyway, presumably if there's indeed another kind of immunotherapy that would work, it would be good to get it before the surgery so the immune system would have a better chance to blah, blah, blah. So this is how you can imagine you're a doctor and it's like, oh, you're fucking Marcus Welby all of a sudden? And
there's a good reference, by the way. I like that.
Yeah, that only you are at the cutoff age for understanding that joke, for that reference. But anyway, the one doctor was still, don't worry, everything will work out. But the other, and this is, on the one hand, this was a total waste of time, it turns out, this wild goose chase. But I was vindicated because the other doctor is like, in the next, my telemeeting with him, he's like, yeah, honestly, we've not seen a case quite like yours. You're an outlier. I think, so here's something you can consider. Postpone the surgery a little. We'll give you chemotherapy before the surgery. So, like, this is vindication of the question I'm raising. I'm sorry. I got his attention. He's right. He's saying, you're right. There's something weird here. Now, as it happens, I had already done a second PET scan. We hadn't got the results. 2 days later, and by the way, this was another terrifying moment. My wife's listening on speakerphone, and I'm looking at her like, oh, fuck. We're looking at each other like, the doctor is freaking out. This is not good. But then a couple days later, the second PET scan comes in, and it is now clear. We don't have a new Navdex number, but it's now clear the immunotherapy is working.
Yeah.
Other indicators. And so, and then later when we finally got that a new Navdex number, it showed that, yes, even before the surgery, there was a second phase where that number started to climb. So anyway, you tell me, I'd have been better off if I had, I guess, just seen that number I saw and thought, yeah, you're right. Just don't look into it. I would have saved myself tons of online time researching this,
yep.
Communicating with them, talking to my wife, fretting, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, as this guy said, the doctor who was paying attention, thought I was on the right, path, my concern. I said, look, I'm sorry if I got a little too animated in this conversation, because at some points my wife was looking at me and going like, and like, cool it. And he said, no, you've got to advocate for yourself. And
yeah.
I think that's right. But anyway, post-surgery, Navdex number is 0. It had already gone from like 8,000 to 4,000 before the surgery because of the immunotherapy, but now 0. And that's a key. That's the reason I'm not having to have radiation or chemo or anything. And we'll just watch it and see what happens.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's my story. And I guess now we'll go into overtime. And I mean, maybe down the road there will be other things. I've had a lot of thoughts about cancer over the last few months.
Could imagine that. So your regime, and I have had relatives who have gone through cancer successfully, and nowadays you get tested every once in a while.
Yeah. It'll be every 3 months at first, and then presumably at some point, if there's no further issue, that'll be it. By the way, last thing before we go into overtime, I mean, our dog Milo, he was almost 16. In
Oh,
fact, yesterday was
yeah.
his
I saw
birthday.
this.
I mean, the cancer kind of killed him. I don't know. It's like we went into New York. We were going to stay a few days while I'm in the hospital at my sister-in-law's apartment. And I don't know, by the end of New York, Milo was suddenly in a very bad way. I guess it's possible who knows? But anyway, he
sorry,
died.
man.
Yeah, he died a couple weeks ago. So anyway, people should go to my Twitter handle at Robert Ryder and see my stirring obituary thread for Milo. Such a cute, wonderful dog. Okay. So anything you want to say before we go into overtime? We're going to talk about Superman, which we've both seen.
Superman. We haven't talked about the Coldplay incident.
Oh, there's Coldplay, and then there's this Netflix movie, Mountainhead, which you hated and I kind of hated. We maybe spend a little time on that. Yeah,
Sounds
Coldplay.
good.
Who among us?
Who among us?
Who among us hasn't gotten nailed by the Coldplay camera?
It's the fucking kiss cam.
Yeah. When will we learn? Okay, so thanks, people. If you want to do overtime, you can become a paid subscriber to the either Paul's newsletter or mine. And by the way, soon we're going to have a fabulous new discount offer. Assuming I can confirm with Paul after this that that's going to happen. It'll be mind-blowing, so stay tuned. A joint discount thing. So we're going to overtime, right, Paul?
Overtime, yep.
Okay, we're going to. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you later.